There's a lesson at CIA that differentiates between persuasion and influence. And that's really what you're getting at. Persuasion is what it means when you can bend someone to your will in their presence in a moment, right? So in proximity. And persuasion is exclusively based on emotional appeals, right? The fear of death in this case, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of shame, the fear of being considered someone who's unsafe or unclean, right? And if you think about the COVID crisis, the pandemic, anybody without a vaccination was treated like a leper, right? You are the unclean. You are going to infect the rest of us.
Domestic terrorists. Yeah.
That's all persuasive emotional appeals. Unless that's in your face, unless that's right in front of you, it can't affect you, right? Now, when influence takes over, influence happens when persuasion is over, when persuasion ends. It means that even when you're not directly in contact with an emotional appeal, you're still thinking about it, right? That's influence. So to put it in a really, basic form, you're walking down the street, you see a beautiful female, you look at her, she captures your attention. That's persuasion. 4 hours later, you're having a latte and you're like, wow, what about that girl I saw on the street? That's influence. She's gone now, but she has influenced you, right? That's the same way information works. That's the same way the four motivational levers work. You have to invest in persuasion first, which is why you see such aggressive campaigns. Think about when Biden nominated Kamala Harris to run for the Democratic ticket. All of a sudden, it was announced, and for weeks, all you saw was Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris, Kamala Harris everywhere. That was a persuasion campaign to try to build the momentum to have influence long term, which ultimately didn't work out the way they thought it would work out, right?
Right.
That's the way all of advertising works. That's the way all of manipulation works. That's the way abusive relationships work. Yeah. Essentially, you have an abusive partner who's constantly persuading their target so that in the moments where that target is at work, where that target's out shopping or out with their friends, or potentially in a moment where they could execute their own escape from the abusive relationship, they don't. Because the influence of the abuser is so powerful that even in that moment of freedom, the target of the victim of the abuse themselves stays stationary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the dark side of how to use influence in this way. Similarly, there's the light side of influence. And this is also a little bit of a slippery slope, because one aspect of morality is to allow people to have ultimate free will. And the other part is also help them make the best decision possible, right? And I think that's something that every parent, I know that you're a father, and it's what every parent has to do is okay, in one regard, I have to persuade and influence my child to make better decisions because it's necessary. They have a developing brain and they need that support. On the other hand, you want them to be able to come to these conclusions on their own, to have the sovereignty of selfhood, which ultimately they'll need, moving forward. So it's an interesting balance, even if your intentions are actually pure and good. How much persuasion and influence do you have and do you use? And I think I think it's a line that all of us, I guess, got to find in our own hearts, right?
It's a challenge because, many of us do it without realizing that we do it. And I think if my life is an average life compared to everybody else, we can all reflect on our childhood and remember those moments where our parents were far more persuasive or far more influential than they probably realized they were being, right? For good or for ill, where they said something or did something that we just never forget.
Yeah.
Right. My mom, when my father died before I was born, my mom remarried. Subsequently, she remarried multiple times, but I was raised by a stepdad who my mom married after my father died. And there was this one conversation that we had when I was 10 or 11 years old. I'll never forget it. And it was an argument I had with my stepdad. I went to my mom to seek her support, and she looked at me and she said, Andy, I love your dad more than you.
Wow.
And I was blown away. And I was like, how can you say that, Mom? And she's like, because, baby, I choose to love him. I default to loving you. You're my son. You're my blood. I'm always going to love you. But I have to choose every day to love him. So I love him more. In my mom's mind, that made perfect sense. It made perfect sense for her for 25 years until she got a divorce. But as a 9-year-old, as a 10-year-old kid, like I'm 44, almost 45 years old, I carry that with me every single day, right? That my mom loved somebody else more than she loved me. Not even my sisters, right? Just this dude who did not count me as his own, this dude who hit me, this dude who belittled me, this dude who, made me feel terrible about myself. She loves him more than she loves me. That's a moment of persuasion that turns into a lifetime of influence on this specific subject.
Wow.
We all have memories like that. We all have moments like that with professors, with parents.
Yeah.
And this is what sucks about being a parent, dude. You never know when that moment is happening. You never know when you're the one doing that to your child.
I know.
So fresh on me. Freedom.